In these games, we will be discussing NFL games that went to overtime. Now, unlike in the NHL, there's no top prize for getting a tie for going to overtime, but you can tie in there. We haven't seen one all season, and the chance of a tie is actually very unlikely. It's very difficult to do, but it can happen if a game is thrown to OT. And our first game in overtime all season was Monday Night Football Week 1. The Jets beat the Bills 22-16. This is the one where Aaron Rodgers famously got injured, and the Bills jumped out to a pretty strong lead. It was they jumped out to a 13-3 lead at halftime. The Jets managed to tie it up, throw it to overtime, and then they marched down the field and they scored a touchdown. Yeah, it was they jumped out to a 13-3 lead. And the Jets managed to come back. They actually took the lead, but Tyler Bass got a field goal to tie it up, and it showed some promise in the Jets. I was visiting this every single time I do a game. This game is so annoying. So I hope they're on a lot of early season ties. Week overtime. Oh, great. Week 2 has in overtime as well. Actually, it's 2. So I'll show you Seahawks Lions, and then we'll just go to Titans Chargers. Yes, in this game, the Seahawks, it was pretty much a back and forth game like their last one. Just that in this case, Detroit managed to tie up 31-31 after they actually were trailing 31-21. So it was a very back and forth game. But again, Seattle managed to march down the field and score a touchdown. Doesn't matter who was in first. A touchdown in regulation is going to end overtime as a victory for your team. In the playoffs, if you march down the field and score a touchdown, now you'll have a chance to respond, but not in the regular season. We also have Titans versus Chargers in week 2. This is the Titans' first win since November. Chargers started off the season really poorly. They are still doing really poorly. They're both really bad teams, but the Titans are eliminating the Chargers aren't. In this case, you see, another very back and forth game between the two teams. Neither side really had a big lead. So, of course, it's going to end in the 2024 thing in regulation. But the Titans do score a field goal to end the game in OT. Since it didn't end in a touchdown, they scored a field goal with about 5 minutes left. When you add up the times, you actually do get to 28 plus 36 is 64. You do get 64-58 time played, which, given how it ended up with 5:02 left in OT, does actually make sense. So this is a game where Chargers must have lost possession, and the Titans were able to score a field goal off of that to win the game. So week 2 had 2 games thrown to overtime. And yeah, that's that. Now, week 3 had the Colts-Ravens game thrown to overtime. This is the Ravens' first loss all season. And this game is going to be critical. Not really because the Colts are threatening the Ravens, but because it gave the Colts a victory that if not for this victory, they probably would not be taken seriously for playoff contention right now. But they are because of this overtime win. Again, both teams come out as 2-1. The Colts wouldn't collapse, but then they would surge back. Whereas the Ravens, they would pretty much just be on a surge. But this is, again, a pretty back and forth game where no side really got out to a strong lead over the other. So, of course, it makes sense that that it would end in the 1919 in regulation. The Ravens actually got a safety. If not for the safety, the Colts would have won outright in 1917. But there was still a field goal, and then the Colts got a field goal in overtime. There was only 1 minute and 9 seconds left, so this probably came pretty damn close to to that. And as you can see with the time of possession, you could clearly see that by that point that the Colts had gotten it, it was enough to end the game. Also, so far we've still not seen a single team play in multiple overtimes. That will change. Multiple teams will go into multiple overtimes this season. Week 4, Rams Colts, that goes to overtime. So the Colts are going to be playing in 2 overtimes. They have more, I think, even more overtimes coming to them. But in this case, the Rams marched on the field and they scored a touchdown early on in overtime. LA actually jumped out to a 23-0 lead in the third quarter. That the Colts would be it'll be maybe not historical, but it'll be very impressive if the Colts managed to overcome that. So this is honestly sort of similar to what it would be like if the Super Bowl 58, if the Falcons were able to win it after almost blowing the lead. It was scary because they almost blew a major lead. But the Rams were able to march off the field in overtime and score a touchdown to prevent the Colts from coming back. And that was and yeah, that was that. Also, Commanders Eagles went to OT. Commanders Eagles also went to OT. Again, in this game, it was unfortunately it was actually a pretty back and forth game. The Commanders actually at one point had a 10-point lead. It was 17-7 over the Eagles. The Eagles came back, and in the fourth quarter was full of scoring. And the Commanders were able to get a touchdown pass to make it 31-31. But in overtime, the Eagles got a field goal to make it 34-31 with 3:58 left. And when you look at the team stats, you do see it pretty much did come down to the fact that there was 3:58 left. Because, when you add the times, you just get that. So the Eagles were still undefeated. That wouldn't last for very long, and the Commanders fell to 2-2. Again, a pretty scary game. And again, multiple teams would have multiple OTs this season. Week 5 didn't have any games going to overtime. Nor did Week 6. In Week 7, still no games in overtime. There was a game in overtime in Week 8. Just one, but Jets-Giants. Again, a very ugly and sloppy game with the Giants almost having a 10-7 lead, but the Jets tied it in overtime, and then they were able to get a field goal in overtime. And based on TOP, the Giants had already lost possession when the Jets got the field goal, which is, again, hence why it didn't need to go into a second overtime period. But after that, there's no OT for a while. Week 9 has no OT. Week 10 has no OT. Week 11 has no OT. Week 12 has no OT. Week 13 has OT. Colts Titans. This is actually a very interesting case because of the game being tied 25-25 in regulation. Titans got the field goal, but the Colts got the touchdown. I actually forgot. Bills versus Eagles in Week 12 would have a similar story. 34-37. And yeah, that's pretty much what happened. Finally, the last game I know of that went to OT is Texas versus Titans. I might have missed one, but I have to go now. So and in this case, it was pretty much a field goal. And actually, when time expired, I didn't think it was that bad. But yeah, when time expires, that was really the closest that we got to having a tie.